Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for July 6th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some breaking Star Wars news, and I'll sit down and chat with Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige and director Peyton Reed to talk about the new film Ant-Man and the Wasp and the future of the MCU. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
Star Wars news. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
Star Wars Episode 9 is gearing up to start production, and we're starting to hear some of the big casting news. And today it was revealed that JJ Abrams is going to be reteaming with Keri Russell. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Keri Russell, who worked with Abrams on a TV show called Felicity that was on the WB back in the late 90s, has been cast in Star Wars Episode 9. So we're not sure exactly what role she's going to be playing, but we do know that the role calls for action-heavy fight scenes. So place your bets now whether she's going to be fighting for the Resistance or the First Order.
And, as you mentioned, this is a reunion of sorts. She worked with JJ Abrams on his, early TV project, Felicity, and also reteamed with him in Mission Impossible 3.
Yes.
And, there's a big connection. She also starred in Abrams' friends, Matt Reeves' Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So there's a big connection between that whole group. I guess the question is, who is she playing? Already on Twitter, because, a white woman with brown hair has been cast in a Star Wars movie. We have to assume it is Rey's mother, right?
I mean, I don't have to assume that, but I know that Star Wars fans are going to assume that. I feel like, and Peter, you may feel completely differently about this, so I'm interested to hear what you think. But I think if she is playing Rey's mother, I really hope we get a scene where she's just a nobody, and maybe the action-heavy fight scenes are Rey's mom getting in like drunken bar fights in a space bar on some planet somewhere, because I think anything else, any larger importance imbued on that character would dramatically undercut the powerful messages of Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So I really hope that JJ Abrams resists that temptation.
Well, what powerful message are you talking about?
Well, the idea that anybody can, that the Force is a thing that can be tapped into from anyone, and the whole thing of Rey's parents being nobody of any intergalactic significance, right? Like if Rey goes on this quest to track down her parents in Episode 9 and finds that her mom is Felicity or is Keri Russell. Felicity.
By the way, yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about the. Yeah, okay.
Is Keri Russell, who's like some badass, space fighter who, is maybe a Force user or like some warrior or anybody other than what she said in the previous movie, which is, my parents are nobody. They abandoned me. They were junkers who traded her for a drink, basically. I feel like it's going to like lighten the or soften the message there, right? Don't you think?
Well, let me play devil's advocate here for a second and say that, there are a lot of Star Wars fans that came out of The Last Jedi and don't believe that that's the truth. It is coming from an unreliable narrator. It's coming from Kylo Ren, who is, evil.
But she says it first, though.
Yeah, I think she fears that, but she doesn't know that. Well, one thing we don't know is that she has come to accept that fact is true. I feel like that revelation comes at the moment of, right before a huge climactic action scene. And actually, that's one of my biggest disappointments of The Last Jedi, is that we don't actually get to see her deal with that revelation. So who's to say that she isn't still interested in seeking out and trying to find, her parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole scene in the cave in The Last Jedi where, she looks in the mirror and it's the whole thing where it's just the infinite versions of her and all of that. I think that, like, thematically that works so well in that movie where, she the power lies in her the whole time. It's not a lineage thing. But I don't know. I guess
I'm not arguing against that. And I'm not even saying that if Keri Russell appears as Rey's mom in Episode 9, that this would, that she would be a Jedi, have force powers or anything like that. Other people have, claimed that maybe she'll appear in a flashback. I'm not sure why we would need a flashback. But do you think Keri Russell would be too old to be raised? No, I guess she probably wouldn't.
No, I don't think so.
No. But I guess most people are probably assuming that she would be the modern age of, Daisy Ridley as a mother. Yeah, okay, so let's put that aside. That's probably not happening.
I hope
let's
not.
admit that. But I think it is possible. We should say that, JJ Abrams set up a lot of things in his Force Awakens, and Rian Johnson kind of threw those things away. JJ Abrams coming back, and he can make the slate whatever he wants it to be.
Right.
So it is possible. Who do you think she's going to play if she's not playing Rey's mom? My first guess is that she's going to be playing a resistance leader, because if you do some math, you see that we've lost quite a few powerful women in the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
We lost Holdo, and we were probably going to lose Leia. So maybe she would fill that role.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great guess. The other thing, and maybe this is just me hoping that Keri Russell has a little bit of fun in store for her. Maybe she's able to sort of sink her teeth into some scenery coming up. But I'm kind of hoping that maybe she either takes the place of Phasma, or is a Phasma-esque character, like a first order person who's sent out to finally clean up the resistance once and for all, and maybe that's where that sort of action heavy physicality will come in for her character. I just feel like anytime somebody like that can play against type and play a villain, it's always a lot of fun to see them like that. So on a selfish level, I kind of hope that that's where it goes, but I think your guess is probably a lot more it makes a lot more sense.
Okay, how about this ridiculous bit of speculation? What if she played one of the Knights of Ren?
Oh, wow.
Is she too old? Like, does the not mesh with Adam Driver is much younger, right?
She is older than Adam Driver. She's 42 and Adam Driver is 34. So, it's not that big of an age gap, I guess.
I don't know. I feel like if they were going to the same Jedi Academy, that we don't know that the Knights of Ren were all... Do we know that they were all members of
I don't think so. I think that's like the assumption, right? But I think they're, and especially with Abrams and his whole mystery box thing, like you never know. That he could always throw in a monkey wrench into that equation and maybe have like the Knights of Ren have maybe she was part of the first class of the Knights of Ren or something. I don't know.
I just want to know if they're ever going to follow up on this Knights of Ren thing that JJ Abrams set up in Force Awakens and has not been really mentioned since that time.
Maybe Keri Russell is playing Constable Zuvio.
One other thing we should probably talk about is... this means more women in Star Wars. And the men on Twitter are probably going to be angry, the man babies.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I think we're going to see more of this. Didn't the story say that there's going to be more casting coming soon?
Yeah, so Variety's report says, and I'll quote it directly here, Abrams will likely cast 2 more actors by the time the film begins production at the end of the month. So it looks like we've got more Star Wars Episode 9 news on the way.
Yeah, and we lost Carrie Fisher, Holdo died, Phasma apparently died.
Maybe died, we don't know.
So I think they're going to probably have to fill some of those roles with female actresses. But who knows? The Variety story, interestingly, first said that Lawrence Kasdan was writing the script, but that turned out to be an error, so we should mention that. Do you have any other thoughts on this bit of Star Wars news?
I really like Keri Russell's work in Mission Impossible 3, and that was in 2006. So it's been a long time since she's collaborated with Abrams on a mainstream project like this. And I'm excited to see the two of them, get back to work together. I know she's been working on The Americans for a long time on FX, but now that series is done, maybe she's going to step back into some, more movie roles. And I think, she definitely has the physicality. Abrams sort of made his career on shows like Felicity and Alias with with leading ladies who have a lot of range dramatically and physically, and I think Keri Russell should be a movie star. So I'm glad to see her in this movie.
Yeah, no, I'm also a fan of Keri Russell. I have not gotten into the Americans. Did you ever watch Felicity?
No, I didn't. That was like just a bit before my time, I think.
Oh my God, I wonder if it holds up. It was such a great show. It was basically Alias without the without the spy stuff. It was more dealing with college. I wonder if you dove into it and just tried to watch a couple episodes, if you could relate, because I feel like, you know, our college days are behind us. But yeah, she's great. I'm excited to have her in here, no matter who she plays. You know, I don't care if she's Frey's mom. I don't care if she's a resistance leader. I don't care if she's, you know, part of the First Order. I'm just glad that she's part of this movie. And I think we've said as much as we possibly can about this news topic. So
fingers crossed for Constable Zuvio.
I think that's probably the most unlikely of them all. But again, it is JJ. So
you never know.
They could have that, you know, trademark solo scene where, you know, the mask comes off, Constable Zuvio, and reveal Keri Russell.
I love it.
Okay, let's move on to our feature presentation, which I did some interviews with Marvel head Kevin Feige and Ant-Man and the Wasp director Peyton Reed about Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is out in theaters now. For the most part, these interviews are spoiler-free, but I would probably say don't listen to these interviews if you haven't seen the film, because we do talk about plot points. First up is my interview with Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige. We talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp. We talk about Spider-Man Far From Home, the Disney streaming service, Infinity War, theme parks, and much, much more. I should say, before you listen to this interview, I did come into this junket wearing a t-shirt that had Michael Jackson next to E.T. on it. So that is what Kevin Feige is referring to at the start of this interview. Here is Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige. Hey,
that's
going,
the
Kevin?
greatest shirt ever.
Thank you.
You know, Taika has that as a poster that he carries with him in every production office he goes to.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that.
It is. I hadn't seen it for probably 30 years until he had that. It was on his office door on Ragnarok. It was that color poster.
Yeah.
Because it came with an album or something. He did an
that was
album.
where it came out. Yeah,
that's what it was. He had the album.
It's cool that you know that. Before we get to Marvel, I have to ask you one question about rumors. There's been rumors recently that you might be involved in the future of Star Wars. No. Only
in my backyard with my action figures.
Okay. In this film, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, we get to see more of the quantum realm. I was kind of under the impression that time does not go by in the same way in the quantum realm as it does here, but she aged. So I was wondering, what's up with that?
Much like quantum mechanics itself, it is all very complicated, and it is, you know, there are various. If you notice in this film, he talks about she through Scott Lang says, "Meet me in the wastelands beyond the void." There are various levels that we check in on. So there are many different layers to the quantum realm.
So there are layers that time does not pass by.
That's what they've told us.
Yeah.
They've told us that it you know, time and physics and space work very differently down there. But that was part of it. That was a big question during the development process. And as usual, you're the first one to even pick on it a little bit, which is, should she have aged or not? And we felt that in the quantum realm we could justify either one, but that ultimately you want to have an emotional reunion with Michael Douglas and an emotional reunion with Evangeline Lilly, and our first instinct had always been specifically Michelle Pfeiffer from that first movie. It felt like it should be somebody who's the right age, as opposed to Michael Douglas with somebody who has not aged, or Evangeline Lilly connecting with somebody who's not aged. That just adds another layer of sort of sci-fi weirdness. Yeah. And we're not afraid of sci-fi weirdness. I love it. But
I mean, as evidenced by Guardians and Thor. Yeah.
Right.
That first scene with Michelle de-aged. I mean, all the de-aging that you guys have done looks incredible, but she looks like she stepped out of a movie from 30 years ago. It looks so good. And while I was watching it, I was wondering if you guys ever end up doing like a prequel, would you guys use the same, like if you were going to do a Ant-Man prequel with Hank Pym or Black Widow prequel, would it be Scarlet or would it be Douglas de-aged or would it be a new...
Well, I think having the option is pretty amazing. I think having the technology, and even without spoiling anything, Sam Jackson is shooting a movie for us right now where he's entirely 25 years younger the whole movie.
Yeah.
So that'll certainly be the one.
And Coulson, right?
And Coulson. So that'll be the first one where it's a character for the whole movie, as opposed to a glimpse at a certain period of time. It's the whole movie. So it's possible, assuming that works. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's very good when you are starting, by the way, with somebody like Michelle Pfeiffer or Michael Douglas, or for that matter, Sam Jackson or Clark Gregg.
Why? Because you have all the reference material, or
you have all the reference material, and they have aged amazingly.
Yeah,
they've not aged like normal humans. It's like Paul Rudd.
Yeah,
these
Paul
are.
Rudd looks like he stepped out of Clueless. I don't understand it.
Yeah, he somehow can do that effect in real life.
Yeah, you had to, when you were planning this, you were planning alongside Infinity War. At what point did you know, like, this is going to be a total prequel and we won't really kind of cross the streams until...
The whole time it was... we knew that we wanted to feel like a standalone movie. We wanted to tonally do a very different movie from Infinity War. And as Peyton said on the panel today, that it was more interesting for us to deal with the fallout of Civil War. To deal with what kind of rift that caused. Because they seemed to be... a good trio at the end of Ant-Man 1, Hank and Hope and Scott. But knowing how Hank felt about it, knowing that Wasp was not there in Germany in Civil War, what did that do to their relationship? And he was in prison and got broken out, so we had to address that.
Yeah.
And it led to this very good notion of the final 48 hours of final 3 days of house arrest.
You said in an interview this week that this film largely connects with Avengers 4. And I think it answers, where's Ant-Man, the question that people were asking with Infinity War. But does this connect to Avengers 4 in any other greater ways that people might not be seeing on first watch? Mm-hmm. Can you hint at them? No? Okay. You just announced Spider-Man Far From Home, the title.
I didn't.
Or you didn't. The master spoiler himself.
Yeah.
Did.
It's a fun gag that's half fun and half real.
I've heard.
With he and Ruffalo.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I was wondering, since this is going to take place mostly in London, or you've insinuated that
shooting in London.
Large
shooting in London.
But I think you said there are scenes in London.
Yes.
And you've also said in the past that the plan for these Spider-Man movies is to kind of have another Marvel cameo in each one, kind of like you did with Tony Stark.
I did?
You did in some interview a long time ago.
It's in the MCU, so yeah.
I'm wondering, because London, there is a sanctum there. Is Doctor Strange going to be the one in this one?
No.
No.
Okay. I could be coy about it, but no.
Okay.
I don't want to get people excited.
Okay.
But Benedict and Holland have liked the idea of working together.
Yeah. Well, that'd be fun. It was my first thought when I heard rumors of Mysterio, so I was like, oh, it'd be cool to have the magic guy and the magic guy. But anyways, how are you going to market these movies with Avengers 4 coming? Like, we've heard, Amy had said that the Spider-Man takes place minutes after Avengers 4, but you got to start marketing Spider-Man before Avengers 4 comes out. So doesn't that pose like an interesting problem?
It does. I mean, I think much like Ant-Man and the Wasp, which when you see the movie connects and you see how it connects. In the marketing, you don't show that part.
Yeah.
I think we'll very much feel like a return to the fun of Homecoming and Peter with his class and going to places we don't usually see Peter Parker, and a new villain, and that will be the focus, both of the movie, but certainly of the marketing.
In this movie, Goggins says he's working for someone. We don't really get to find out who he's working for. Is that something that is seeds that are being planted? Can you give us a tease?
A little bit. I mean, there are deeply planted seeds, and there are less deeply planted seeds. He says shield and Hydra don't exist anymore. He's working for people that are dangerous people.
But they're interested in quantum realm for some reason.
They're interested in that because it's the new thing. We'll see where that goes.
Disney has a streaming service coming up. I know largely you and the TV have kind of been separate entities. If there were to be a Marvel movie for the Disney streaming service, would that be you guys or would that be the Disney TV people?
The discussion,
I mean the Marvel TV.
There've been we've started discussing the streaming service. It's going to be an important thing for the company, and we're figuring out what our involvement will be in it now.
I keep on hearing you say post Phase 3, and you've said in the past that there is no Phase 4.
I think I said would it even be called Phase 4? Might be.
Yeah.
But what, or will it not be?
What does that mean?
It means we're focusing on finishing Phase 3 and delivering on the promise that we made at the El Capitan so many years ago.
That was a long time ago now.
And yet, all the movies we announced haven't come out yet.
We still don't know the title of Avengers 4.
Right.
When can we expect to learn that?
I think, towards the end of the year and in the fall.
The other interesting thing I think you guys are doing is you have 10 years and 20 films, and you've built up all these expectations built in of like what a Marvel movie is, and you've been playing against those expectations. Like at Infinity War, there's not the mid-credit scene, and there was gasps in every screening I've seen of it. And in this film, the after credits question mark. I think you're playing. Like, can you talk about that? Because you guys, I think, are now having fun with us a little bit.
I think we always have. I mean, it's always been, and I wouldn't say intentional to pull the rug out or anything. It's just always been, what do we think would be fun? And just when people think they know what the formula is, we do something different. Just because we want 20 films in 10 years, we always want to shift and we always want to change. We always want to do things. Not having a mid-credit scene in Infinity War was the idea. 4 years ago was going back to, and then we'll do this, and it'll be shocking, and then the credits will roll, and then they'll look for hope, and there'll be nothing. So the first time I saw that was at the premiere when everybody gasped.
One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I'm watching this film, I see that whole contraption of them to enter the quantum realm. I know you're a big fan of the Disney theme parks, but I see that and I'm like, oh my god, that's like a Disney ride meant to happen.
The tunnel, you mean? The thing? Yeah.
Like,
that would be cool.
When you're designing this stuff, does that ever, like...
The movie itself?
Yeah, does that ever enter your mind? Like, this
Always.
could be the perfect...
Always. I mean, going back to from before Disney bought us. We used to walk around in Heimdall's Observatory on the set of Thor 1 and be like, this would be this could be the cue of a ride, and you go on Bifrost. So that's just the way we think. Now, we can talk with Imagineers who are all starting to put it together. So it's kind of incredible.
It's finally happening.
It's finally happening.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Good seeing you.
Good
Nice
seeing
to
you.
meet
And next up is my interview with director Peyton Reed. We talk about how the development process was different from the first film. This film has a subplot with close-up magic. As you know, I'm a magician and a member of the Magic Castle, so I had to bring that up and find out the story behind that. We talk about the films that inspired the sequel and how they accomplished the shrinking effects for some of the sequences in the film. And we talk about hidden Easter eggs and the editing process and how much longer the assembly cut was. All that and more. Again, there are some plot points discussed in this interview, but I don't think it's anything super major. But if you are a spoiler phobe, you might want to wait until you've seen the movie to listen to this interview. Here is Ant-Man and the Wasp director Peyton Reed. Peyton?
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Okay. Yeah.
Amazing.
Feige said that Taika has a poster of this in his production house.
He does. I actually have the picture disc.
Oh, you have the
Yeah.
that came out.
Yeah. I'm ashamed to say. Ashamed/proud to say.
I've never owned that. I do have the E.T. Coors Light advertisement on the wall, though.
Is that true?
Yeah, he's behind the bar, and it says, "Before you drive, phone home."
Nice. Perfect. I was wondering, like, how is Coors Light going to tie into E.T.?
They would never
Makes
do
sense.
that.
No.
Well, it doesn't make sense.
No. Kids, if you're going to drink Coors Light.
Okay, when you came up to the first film, obviously, you came on late into the process.
Yes.
This one, you were very actively involved in development. How does that begin? Like, do they have an idea? Do they we want to do a story with Ghost? Like, how does?
No, it really is like us getting in a room with the writers, and really talking about all the things, that we had set up in the first movie that we know we wanted to pay off or further in this movie, and really sort of just batting around just general ideas. There's no template whatsoever, which is really nice. And particularly for the Ant-Man movies, which, we didn't have any of the narrative responsibility of dealing with, Infinity Stones or anything like that. So we could operate in our own little corner. What we did know is that this movie had to be not only a sequel to Ant-Man, but also to Civil War. You couldn't ignore...
And you knew, right away that this is going to take place before Infinity War, we don't have to deal with that.
Right away, we knew it really just had to deal with Ant-Man and Civil War. We knew we were going to come out before Infinity War, but we really didn't deal at all with if we were going to have to or not have to deal with any of the fallout of that movie. Or if we were, how directly or indirectly we were going to address it in the body of our movie. There were various ideas that we and the writers threw around for a long time. So it was really just amassing sort of what the story was going to be. And then sort of figuring out that aspect of the movie later into the process. But we knew we had to deal with, I knew I had very strong feelings about, well, if Scott had taken the suit and gotten involved with the infighting with the Avengers, that's Hank Pym's worst nightmare. Yeah. You're taking my tech that I've entrusted with you and exposing it to the Avengers and exposing it to Tony Stark and then also getting thrown into the raft and the suit's confiscated. Like, that is a fireable offense as far as Hank Pym's concerned. So we knew that was a great starting point for this movie, starting Hank and Hope and Scott estranged from each other. I liked that. That gave us a really great jumping off point. And also a point that, I've never done a sequel before, and I can only go by what I like and don't like in sequels. And I like in sequels when the first movie doesn't start right as the first one ends, where there's water under the bridge and the audience has to play some catch up as to wait, what happened to them? Why are they not speaking? What's going on? That was exciting to me.
One of the early scenes in this movie is the fantastic sequence where they're in that fort with the slide and stuff. Reminded me in a way of Goonies, even though there's nothing really like that. I guess the Rube Goldberg thing. It got me thinking, what movies did you take as inspiration going into this?
I think the biggest inspirations, were when we talked about the first movie really as sort of a heist movie. We wanted to stay in the crime genre in this thing, and we really talked a lot about, structurally, Elmore Leonard novels. What if Elmore Leonard wrote a science fiction novel and Marvel made a movie of it? That was sort of our jumping off point. But we really looked at movies like Midnight Run was a big influence in that there's a very simple goal. De Niro's a bounty hunter. He's got to bring in Charles Grodin, but then there's the rival bounty hunters and the FBI and all these complications and double crosses that happen. That'd be a cool template for a Marvel movie. And After Hours, the Scorsese movie, was a big one. We like the idea of a very specific timeline. Just over a couple of days, Scott Lang has 3 days left of house arrest. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, that was, it really was just kind of one crazy night idea. Of course, Bogdanovich's What's Up, Doc was a big influence. A movie I loved as a kid, and we screened at Marvel, and it's like, here's the ridiculous comedic car chase through San Francisco, and also the chemistry between Streisand and Ryan O'Neal in that movie, and that was a big one. And then just again, always going back to I think the Ant-Man movies are different than a lot of the other things in the MCU in that all the action sequences are really, they come from a comedic place.
Yeah.
And Buster Keaton is a giant influence. I went back and watched Seven Chances again, which has, to me, the greatest chase scene of all time in a movie. And also, to me, one of the earliest examples of a ticking clock in a movie. If you're not married by 7 p.m. on your 27th birthday, you're going to not get this, $20 million or whatever it was in the movie. that kind of thing was okay, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
If we can make a connection to the quantum realm and we can get Janet's location, great, but there's a finite amount of time that we have to do it. And it's good for the drama and it's good for the comedy.
I'm a magician. I'm a member of the Magic Castle.
Nice.
So I really dug the magic stuff in this. And
do you know Blake?
Yeah, I know Blake. Yeah.
Blake's
good. He didn't tell me he was in this, so I was...
Mm-hmm.
Blake, I'm going to talk to him. I want to know, where did that come from? The whole subplot, I guess.
I think the subplot started with, I think it was Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, the writers. Yeah. And we talked about, and Paul. We talked about all the things if Scott Lang is on house arrest essentially for 2 years, all the things he's going to do to try and entertain not only his daughter but himself. And we were all fans of close-up magic, and I think it was Chris and Eric who came with the idea of the online close-up magic academy, and the idea is that's so up Scott Lang's alley. But then how it could sort of filter into the larger plot. And this ridiculous specific thing that he did under house arrest, culminating this idea of this is my plan to how to lure Ghost out, misdirection, and so we just kind of went with it, and it even informed a gag we do late in the movie with the Giant Man suit, where they're trying to create a diversion for Scott to get back home in the giant suit, and it deflates.
Yeah, and
we never explain in the movie how he did it. You see Scott running away in his underwear. We never explain it, and we thought a lot about do we need to get more specific about how to explain this? And it's no, man, it's we've set it up. It's magic. The magician never gives away his secrets, and and it was a great thing for Randall Park and for Paul to play. Randall Park, who's Agent Jimmy Woo, who's tasked with enforcing the house arrest, but he also kind of is a little envious of Scott. He digs Scott. Yeah. He's really intrigued by that magic, and you see him in his office practicing the magic. It was fun comedically and weirdly dramatically.
How did Blake get involved?
Well, we needed a technical consultant, and
he's the guy.
He's the guy, man. And when he was on set, he came around several times when we were doing just the simple card tricks and we were doing some of the other stuff. And he would always do tricks for the crew, and it was just, I'm blown away by that stuff. I don't have to tell you, if you're a member of Magic Castle, that stuff blows me away.
One sequence in this movie that I found particularly funny and amazing is the high school scene where Scott's changing sizes. I can't imagine from a technical aspect how you film that, because you have Hope in the same screen. How does that work?
I have to tell you, there's a lot of complicated stuff happening in the movie, and in that, it's a relatively short sequence in the movie, and when you look at it...
And most of the time you can write it off as CG.
Yeah.
But in that scene, it just doesn't seem...
Yeah. And it was weird because most people will see that scene and say, okay, that's funny, I laughed, but because it's kind of the most mundane scene in terms of the way it's shot, and you're just in a school and these different sizes. But it was the most headache-inducing technical challenge out of everything in the movie, because it's in a school, you know what that looks like, and you just want it to be photoreal. But the math involved, because he's 2 feet tall, then he's big, then he's 3 feet tall, and it constantly changes. And the visual effects department has to do all the literal algebra to make it work and to shoot these plates. It was so meticulous, and I think I rarely get frazzled on the set, but those couple of days that we were doing that, it was
So are you ever creating multiple versions of that set in different sizes, or is it just
only the janitor's closet?
Just the janitor's
the closet was the one that we did sort of a different scales of stuff, and of course for the when he's running down the stairs at the end, that's the real location. But then we built this insane scaled green screen staircase for Paul to go down.
Yeah. And the first film had Janet kind of hidden in there. You hid her in the quantum realm. Is there anything we should be looking out for in viewing this one?
Yeah, there's a lot of little hidden things. I mean, definitely, as you go through Hank Pym's laboratory, on the practical set, and then some of the stuff we added later digitally, there are a lot of weird little Easter eggs and things. And then, as we kind of go further down into the quantum realm in this movie, there are definitely some things to sort of look for. That was a challenge, the quantum realm, because it really could be infinite. It could be anything. Yeah. And figuring out how much of our story took place in the quantum realm, and particularly like designing that last act that cross-cuts between the chase and the quantum realm. But there's stuff to look for in there, definitely.
And my last question is involving that, because at the press conference you were talking about the editing, especially of that last act. I'm wondering, like, how long was the assembly cut? Because there's probably a lot of improv, and is it much larger?
The editor's assembly before I even started director's cut was still pretty lean. I think it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I've had this whole was my mantra on the first movie and this one. It's it cannot be over 2 hours. It's amazing how fast Infinity War moves at whatever it is, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It moves. But because this is comedic, and because it is a more intimate story, it just feels like it wants to be. I like really dense, tight movies. And I also like, hopefully, that it's a repeat viewing experience. But yeah, it was, I think, maybe 2:20, and then just getting it down. A lot of the stuff suggested itself, but really as you sort of start to cut for action and for comedy, it starts to tighten. And there's, then there are the things where it's oh, this thing is great, but I don't think there's a place for it in the story now. Those things where you have to execute a scene.
Well, thank you so much, Peyton.
Yeah, thank you. Good
Appreciate
to see
it. See you too. And there you have it. Hopefully you have enjoyed this episode of Slash Film Daily. This podcast is published every weekday on slashfilm.com and all the popular podcast apps, including iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify. Please send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to peter@slashfilm.com. Leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention the email on the air. And as always, please go rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you on Monday.